After driving 12 hours through a rainstorm to surprise my daughter on her birthday, she said this: "You should have called first, Mom." That's all she said. No hug, no joy. Just those 6 words, each one heavier than the soaked coat I stood in. My fingers were trembling from the cold, and the steering wheel grip. My shoes were ruined. My back ached from sitting so long. But none of that mattered when I parked in front of her house. I only thought about her face, her smile, how she'd react when she saw me again after almost 2 years. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. I had imagined it the whole ride. Over the highway lanes blurred by rain, through the toll booths, past the half-lit gas stations. I had pictured her opening the door, shocked, maybe a little teary, pulling me into a hug. "Mom, I can't believe you're here." That's what I had heard in my head. That was the version I drove through thunder and traffic for. Instead, she looked bothered. Haley, my daughter, my only child. Standing in her doorway with a paper plate in one hand and a glass of white wine in the other. There were soft lights glowing behind her. Music. Laughter. I could see people inside, gathered in small groups, holding drinks and smiling. Her in-laws. Her friends from college. A woman with pearl earrings and too much perfume stepped behind. Haley, eyeing me like I had shown up to the wrong house. Haley stepped outside, carefully pulling the door mostly closed behind her. "It's really wet out, you must be freezing," she said. Her voice was calm, polite, detached. "I wanted to surprise you," I said, offering a tired smile. "I know I wasn't invited this year, but I thought maybe we were past that." "You should have called first," she repeated. It's not a good night for this, Mom." I glanced down. My coat was dripping onto her doormat. My hair was stuck to my forehead. My birthday card, the one I had tucked into my purse 2 rest stops ago, now felt silly. I had picked it carefully. It had a little cupcake on it, with glitter. Haley always hated. I thought it'd make her laugh. "You're having a party," I said quietly. "You told me it would be just the 2 of you this year." Her eyes flicked away from mine. Plans changed. Behind her I heard a woman's voice say, "Who's at the door?" Then, as the door creaked open, I saw her. Margaret, her mother-in-law. Always dressed like she was about to give a lecture on manners. "Oh," she said, lips tightening. "Karen, what a surprise." "Margaret," I said, trying to stay steady. Haley stepped further out and gently closed the door behind her. "Mom, can we not do this right now?" "I drove 12 hours, I reminded her. I know. She wasn't even making eye contact anymore. "But there's a lot of people inside, and it's really not the time. I'll call you tomorrow, okay?" My chest felt tight. Not from the cold, not from the exhaustion, from the sound of her voice. Soft, like she was handling an uncomfortable guest, like I wasn't her mother. I turned slowly and walked back toward my car. She didn't follow. I didn't expect her to. I sat behind the wheel, not starting the engine yet. I stared at her front door for a few minutes. It didn't open again. I peeled off my coat and threw it on the passenger seat. My hands were shaking. I had skipped meals to make it here on time. I hadn't slept well in days. I had spent 3 hours choosing the right gift. A small frame with her baby photo next to her graduation photo. She used to love sentimental things. Apparently not anymore. I drove to a motel off the freeway. The kind with buzzing lights and a vending machine that eats your quarters. The clerk barely looked up. I paid cash. When I got to the room, I didn't bother unpacking. I sat on the bed with the lights off, listening to the wind outside and the soft clicking of the old wall heater. I had raised Haley by myself after her father walked out when she was 10. I had worked 2 jobs, missed holidays, took out loans. I paid for her braces, her summer camps, her college books. When she got married, I gifted her the last of my savings. She had cried that day. She had said thank you. I hadn't seen her cry since. The next morning, I drove back home without turning the radio on once. Just the road, the rain, and the sound of my own thoughts, replaying her face, her voice, her words. You should have called first, Mom. When I got back to my small apartment, the silence hit harder than usual. I stood in the kitchen for a while, looking at the photograph on the fridge. Haley, at age 7, dressed as a princess, cake all over her cheeks. She had called me her hero back then. I didn't cry. I cleaned the coffee maker, watered my plants, folded laundry. Around noon, I opened the drawer where I kept my important papers. Birth certificate, health records, the will. I pulled out the envelope with Haley's name on it and set it aside. Then I reached for another folder, one I hadn't opened in years. It held the deed to the old property upstate, the cabin my father left me, the one Haley always said was too rustic. I stared at it for a long time. Then I picked up the phone and made an appointment with my lawyer. I'd like to revise some documents, I said, and take my daughter off the list. I didn't hear from Haley the next day, or the one after. I thought maybe she'd call to explain herself, or at least send a message pretending the awkwardness at the door hadn't happened. But nothing came. No apology, no text, no curiosity about whether I made it home safe after driving 12 hours through a rainstorm. 4 days later, I finally received a message. Not from Haley, but from Margaret. It came in the form of an email, written in her usual clipped, polished tone. Dear Karen, I hope you arrived safely. Haley was quite overwhelmed the other night. I'm sure you understand how fragile new motherhood can be. In the future, it might be more helpful to coordinate visits in advance. Spontaneity, while sweet in theory, can often bring stress when unannounced. Warm regards, Margaret. I read it 3 times before closing my laptop. I didn't reply. What would I even say? That I'd kept driving through a flash flood to get there. That I'd paid out of pocket for the tires I had to replace on the way. That I'd only shown up because I missed my daughter and wanted to meet my grandson for the first time. Haley didn't even mention the baby when I called 2 weeks earlier. She just said she was figuring things out and not ready for visitors. I respected that. I waited. I bought time with patience. And when I finally couldn't wait anymore, I showed up. Not to force anything, but to offer love. She answered the door and treated me like someone trying to sell life insurance. When my lawyer called to confirm the updated paperwork, I didn't flinch. The property that was supposed to be Haley's inheritance, my father's old cabin and the modest savings account tied to it, would now be rerouted. I had decided to place everything into a living trust under my name, with a clause preventing any transfer to Haley or her family unless I specified it again in writing. It wasn't about revenge. It was about acknowledgement. I had given and given. If they didn't want my presence, they wouldn't get my legacy either. A week passed. I kept my routine. I volunteered twice a week at the senior center down the street, where I taught light, sewing classes, nothing fancy, just pillow covers, hand stitching, small projects. Women in their 70s and 80s would come just to talk. One of them, Marie, asked about my daughter. I told her the truth. She didn't want me at her birthday. Marie blinked. Your daughter didn't want you there. Apparently, I wasn't appropriate for the setting. Marie didn't press. She just nodded and kept threading her needle. That kind of silence was heavier than judgment. Back home, I pulled out the gift I had meant to give Haley that night. The frame with her baby photo and graduation photo. I had picked the wood carefully. Cherry like the crib she once slept in. I stared at it for a while, then wrapped it back up and slid it into the bottom drawer of my bedroom dresser. That Sunday, while making tea, I received another email, this time from Haley. Mom, I know things didn't go as planned, but you showing up like that was really unexpected. We were trying to keep things low-key, and Margaret put so much into planning everything. It was just bad timing. I wish you'd have asked me first. No, sorry. No, I miss you. Just an indirect blame wrapped in polite language. I replied with a simple line. I understand. Take care. She didn't respond. The truth started to settle in. I was not her priority anymore. Maybe I never had been, not in the way I thought. It wasn't just about the birthday. It was how easily she had aligned herself with Margaret, with that side of the family. The way she referred to her life now, everything was we and our plans, and Mark and I are thinking. I rarely heard Mom in her voice anymore. Just formality. I had no place there. But instead of letting that break me, I decided to reclaim the space I had abandoned for so long. My own. The cabin upstate wasn't much. It was quiet, a little worn, with a narrow path behind it that led to the lake. My father had built it himself in the 70s, hammering each plank on weekends, dragging logs with an old Ford that barely worked. I hadn't been there in years. Last time was when Haley was still in college. She complained about the bugs, said the place smelled like damp sweaters and mothballs. I remembered her standing in the kitchen, wrinkling her nose as I made coffee on the old propane stove. This place is cute, she had said, but ironically cute. You should sell it. Back then I laughed it off. Now, I remembered the words like a bruise. I drove up there one morning without telling anyone. I packed a few clothes, brought groceries, and reopened the place. The front door was stiff, and the plumbing groaned like it hadn't been used in years. But it was mine. No one here rolled their eyes when I made instant coffee. No one asked me to wear something less casual. I scrubbed the place top to bottom. I re-varnished the porch with my own hands. I cleared the path to the lake and even replaced the broken window in the bedroom. Day by day, it became a home again. My home. At the end of my second week there, I received a letter in the mail. Not a card, not a note. A formal letter from Margaret. It was printed, signed with a pen, and folded crisply. Karen, there's been some concern within the family regarding the changes you've made to your legal documents. I understand these are your decisions to make, but I would urge you to consider how your actions may affect the next generation. Families grow through forgiveness. Please don't make choices that are impossible to reverse. Margaret. I folded the letter and placed it in the fireplace. No fire needed. What Margaret didn't understand, and maybe Haley didn't either, was that I had spent most of my life thinking that silence, self-sacrifice, and patience would eventually pay off. That if I just waited long enough, loved hard enough, tolerated enough, I would earn a permanent place at the table. But now I knew the truth. I was only welcome as long as I didn't make anyone uncomfortable. I had made them uncomfortable the night I showed up. Not because I was loud, not because I caused a scene, but because I was a reminder. a reminder that I existed outside of their curated little world of matching silverware and wine pairings. I didn't fit their mold, so they shut the door. So I opened another one. By the end of the month, I had officially transferred the cabin into the trust. I had also contacted a local group for older women facing isolation and offered to host weekend retreats at the property. Small gatherings, no charge. Just a place to rest, breathe, and be seen. My daughter may have outgrown me, but I hadn't outgrown my purpose. I didn't expect anything on Mother's Day. After what had happened, after the drive, and the way Haley dismissed me after Margaret's letter, I knew better than to wait for a card or a phone call. But a part of me, an old part, stubborn and naive, still checked the mailbox twice that day, still looked at my phone more often than usual, still waited. Nothing came. By the evening, I took out the frame I had meant to give Haley on her birthday, the one with her baby picture on the left and her graduation photo on the right. I sat with it in my lap. It felt like I was holding a timeline of a life I had poured myself into. I had sewn that pink onesie she wore as a baby. I had stayed up the night before her graduation, ironing her gown and making sure she had her speech notes. And now, none of it meant anything. I carefully removed both photos from the frame and slid them into a manila envelope. I didn't throw them away. I wasn't angry like that. I just couldn't look at them anymore. I put the frame back in its box and packed it away at the back of the closet. 3 days later, I got a text from Haley. "Hope you're well. Things have been a little hectic with the baby. Mark's parents are thinking of hosting a summer gathering. They asked if you could stay at a hotel this time. It's just easier with the space. Hope you understand." There was no mention of Mother's Day. Not even a belated "love you." I stared at the message for several minutes, rereading the words. I could almost hear her tone in them. Flat, avoidant, managerial. It wasn't a daughter talking to her mother. It was someone handling a scheduling conflict. I didn't reply right away. I didn't even know what to say. My chest felt tight again, like it did in the car outside her house. Like it had that night in the motel when I peeled off my soaked jacket and sat in the dark, wondering what I had done wrong. That's what hurt the most. I wasn't even angry yet. Just confused. I started writing a message back, deleted it, wrote another one, deleted again. I finally set the phone down and went outside. The sun was strong that afternoon, and the trees behind the cabin buzzed with insects. I walked to the lake barefoot. The ground was warm, dry. I sat on the edge of the dock and tried to calm my thoughts. I thought about every sacrifice, every single one. The overtime shifts I worked to pay for Haley's orthodontics. The year I gave up Christmas gifts for myself so she could have what she wanted. The way I used to drive her to piano lessons 3 towns over because she didn't like the teacher in our area. The endless nights I stayed up while she cried over boys or school stress or college applications. And now, I was being asked to stay in a hotel so I wouldn't embarrass them. That night, I wrote her back, "No need to worry, I won't be attending. You have your family now. That's enough." She didn't reply. Later that week, Margaret called. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message. "Karen, I heard about your decision not to come. I think you're being overly sensitive. It's not personal. It's just logistical. This is a busy time in their lives. Maybe if you'd made things easier, this wouldn't feel so complicated." I saved the message, just to remember the tone. 2 days later, I made an appointment with an estate consultant. Not a lawyer this time, but someone who specialized in community, trusts, and legacy projects. I asked about setting up a foundation using the cabin and the adjoining land. Not a large one, just enough to support weekend retreats for women like me. Women who raised children alone. Women who were later forgotten by those same children. The consultant asked if I wanted the foundation to carry my daughter's name. I almost laughed. No, I said. Just mine. I spent the following weeks remodeling the cabin to suit the project. I added a new water heater, fixed the back steps, cleared out the storage shed, and turned it into a second sleeping area. I painted the kitchen walls myself. I didn't ask anyone for help. It was a slow process, but each task kept my mind occupied. Each repair felt like I was putting myself back together. I didn't cry. I didn't talk to anyone about what I was doing. I just worked. One afternoon, while painting the front porch railing, I received another message from Haley. Are you mad at me? I feel like you're shutting me out. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. We're just really overwhelmed, right? Now, everyone's trying their best. I didn't answer. Because the truth is, I wasn't mad. Not really. I was done. I had spent the last 3 decades making sure she had everything. And when I stopped giving, the connection stopped too. That's when it hit me. I was never truly seen, just used. Quietly, politely. One night I opened a storage box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were old drawings Haley had made as a kid. Crayon scribbles, Mother's Day cards. One of them read, "You are my favorite person." I folded them neatly, put them back in the box, and taped it shut. I didn't need reminders anymore. From that day forward, I decided to move on without waiting for an explanation or closure. The first women arrived at the cabin the next weekend. Just 3 of them, all in their 60s. One had been widowed last year. One had raised 4 boys alone and hadn't spoken to any of them in months. The third didn't speak much at all, just sat in a rocking chair and stared at the lake. We didn't do anything special. We drank tea. We cooked together. We talked a little. We stayed quiet a lot. It felt right. That Sunday, after they left, I found a small note one of them had left on my kitchen table. "Thank you for seeing me." I folded that note and placed it inside the empty frame I had meant for Haley. It fit perfectly. I didn't answer Haley's messages anymore. After the last one. "Are you mad at me?" I decided there was nothing else I needed to explain. I had already done that for most of my life. Explain myself, adjust, smooth things over. She could believe whatever she wanted, that I was overreacting, that I didn't fit in, that it was about a single night and not decades of slow erosion. Wasn't interested in fixing what they had no problem breaking. The cabin was coming together. The community weekends were quiet but full. I had new faces showing up, women who had heard from others or found us online. Word spread. We didn't advertise. We didn't need to. People like us knew how to find one another. One Friday afternoon, I was folding fresh towels in the cabin kitchen when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Mrs. Whitmore?" a woman asked, clearly reading off something. "We're calling to confirm your appointment with Ms. Yara Flores tomorrow, at 10 a.m. at our downtown office." I'd forgotten I made the appointment. "Yes, I'll be there," I said, and hung up. Yara Flores was a lawyer, not someone I'd worked with before, but one that came highly recommended by the estate consultant. I hadn't told anyone about this meeting, not even Marie or the women from the group. It was something I needed to do quietly. The next morning I got in the car and drove into town. I wore the nicest pair of slacks I owned and a clean button-up shirt. No makeup, just lip balm. I brought the manila folder with the property deed, my updated will, the financial summaries for the trust, and a small envelope with the last remaining photos of Haley and me, just in case I needed a reminder. Yara's office was small but professional. Clean lines, no pretension. She was in her early 40s, sharp, calm, no nonsense. She reviewed the documents slowly, nodding as she read. "You've already done most of the structuring," she said. "The foundation is legally solid, but if you want to go further in securing your intentions, we can file a protective clause." I didn't say anything at first. Yara looked up. It would prevent any attempt to challenge the trust or reallocate the cabin or funds after your passing, especially from family members. "That's what I want," I said. She nodded and began typing. As I waited, I looked around her office. There were no family photos, just books, certificates, and a small plant in the window. "Do you have children?" I asked her suddenly. She paused, surprised. "No. My mother raised me by herself. She passed a few years ago." "Why?" "Just wondering," I said. She gave me a short smile and went back to typing. After finalizing the draft, she printed the first set of documents and slid them across the desk. "You're sure about this?" she asked. I nodded. "There's no one else. This isn't about cutting ties. It's about making peace with where they've already been cut." She didn't question me after that. I signed everything. Back at the cabin, I placed the signed documents into the safe in my bedroom. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still. That was enough. The following week, I received a call. "Haley." I stared at the screen while it rang, then let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text came. "Mom, can we talk? It's important." I didn't reply. Then came another. "Mark's job got relocated. We're moving to Portland next month. I wanted to tell you directly. Still no apology. Still no acknowledgement of what had happened." Then the final message. "I don't want to leave things like this." I sat with that message for a while. I didn't want to leave things like this either. But I had no control over what she thought this even was. For her, this was a misunderstanding, an awkward birthday, a clash of personalities, something that could be smoothed over with a polite coffee and surface-level forgiveness. But I had already left this behind. Instead of replying, I did something else. I drove back into town and visited the county recorder's office. I filed the final version of the land restriction. The cabin and its surrounding 5 acres were now officially protected under the foundation. No sale, no transfer, no inheritance. It would outlive me, but not for them. On my way out, I saw a mother and daughter at the parking lot. The daughter was maybe 10. The mom knelt down to fix her backpack, smiling as the girl jabbered about something. I couldn't hear what, but the girl grabbed her mother's hand before they walked off. I stood there for a second longer than necessary. Back at the cabin, I got to work clearing the shed. I wanted to turn it into a proper workshop space. Marie had mentioned wanting to teach knitting. Another woman, Frances, had experience in herbal remedies. They had ideas. I wanted to make space for those ideas. The cabin was no longer a retreat from pain. It was a space built around what happened after. We weren't broken women. We weren't looking for sympathy. We just needed somewhere to be outside of everyone else's expectations. The next group weekend came with 6 new faces. One woman, Carla, had been completely cut off by her daughter-in-law after the birth of her first grandchild. Another, Deborah, had raised 3 sons and now lived in silence while they sent obligatory Christmas cards and little else. That night, after dinner, Carla looked at me and asked, "How do you stop hoping?" "You don't," I said. "You just stop waiting." She looked like she wanted to cry, but she didn't. She just nodded. Later, after everyone had gone to sleep, I sat alone on the front porch. The air smelled like damp pine and old earth. The chair creaked under me. I checked my phone again. Still no new messages from Haley. I turned it off. I was done waiting. 2 weeks after I filed the land restriction and finalized the foundation documents, a letter arrived. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't a donation receipt from the nonprofit. It was from Haley. It was handwritten. The envelope was cream-colored. My address printed in her handwriting, not a label. No return address. I stared at it for a few minutes before opening it. I wasn't expecting emotion. I wasn't expecting honesty. I wasn't expecting much. But still, I opened it. "Mom, I don't really know how to write this. I've started and stopped this letter at least 10 times. I didn't know how far things had gone until Margaret told me about the foundation, the lawyer, the cabin. I didn't know you had removed me from the will. I think I didn't want to. No. I guess part of me thought you'd always just be there. Even if we didn't talk. That you'd always wait. That you'd understand. I didn't realize how many times I let you down, until it was already too late to fix any of it. I don't know if this letter will fix anything. I'm not asking for money or anything like that. I want to understand what happened to us, and I want to know if there's any part of you that still wants to talk. We're moving next week. I wanted you to see Owen before we go, even just once. I'm sorry. Haley." It was the first time I'd seen the word sorry from her in years. But it wasn't what made my hands shake. It was that she said she wanted me to see Owen, my grandson, the baby I hadn't even held. The child I drove 12 hours to meet and never got past the front porch. I folded the letter slowly, placed it on the table, and sat in silence. No tears, no fury. Just the dull, slow churn of everything she'd left unsaid for so long, and now decided to say just as she was about to leave. I didn't answer right away. I waited 3 days. On the 3rd morning, I drove into town and bought a blank card. No design, just a simple beige front. I wrote 5 lines. You asked if there's any part of me that still wants to talk. There is, but I'm not going to beg to be seen anymore. If you want to visit, the door is open. Just knock. Karen, I signed it with my first name, not Mom. That part of me didn't feel earned anymore. I mailed it. That was all. I didn't hear anything for 5 days. Then, on a Saturday morning, I was cleaning the porch steps when I heard a car pull up. I didn't turn around right away. I knew the sound of her engine. I knew the way she parked. I knew the pause before she opened the car door. I stood, brushing dirt off my knees. Haley was standing by the car. She looked older. Not worn, but heavier. Like life had started pressing down on her the way it eventually does to everyone. She was holding a baby carrier in one hand and a diaper bag slung over her shoulder. No makeup. Flat shoes. A sweatshirt too big for her frame. She didn't wave. I didn't either. She walked toward me slowly. I didn't go meet her halfway. I waited until she reached the steps. "Hi," she said. "Hi, this is Owen." She set the carrier down and unbuckled the baby gently. He was maybe 8 months old. Big eyes, round cheeks, a quiet stare. He didn't cry. Just looked at me like I was another piece of furniture in this unfamiliar place. Stepped aside. "You want to come in?" She nodded. "Yeah, if that's okay." I held the door open. She walked inside like she didn't know where to look. I had prepared nothing. No snacks, no flowers, No dramatic gesture. I had vacuumed. That morning. That was it. She sat down on the couch, still holding Owen. "I didn't think you'd answer," she said. "I almost didn't," I replied. She didn't argue. "I talked to Margaret," she said. "She's not happy with me." "Margaret doesn't live here." She gave a tired laugh. "No, she definitely doesn't." There was a long silence. "I came because I wanted you to meet him," Haley said, adjusting Owen on her lap. "I know it's late. I know it's wrong the way things happened. Why now?" I asked. She looked up at me. "Because when I read your card, I realized you weren't going to chase me anymore. And I didn't want that to be the last thing between us." I sat across from her. "You said you didn't realize how far things had gone," I said. "But they didn't go anywhere. That's the problem. You let it all sit and rot. You avoided every uncomfortable moment because it made your new life easier." She didn't deny it. "I didn't know how to include you," she finally said. "You didn't want to." She swallowed. "Maybe I didn't. Maybe I was scared that if I let you in, people would judge me. Margaret, Mark, his family. They have their version of what family looks like. I tried to fit into that. I wanted to be what they respected. And I thought you didn't match." It hit harder than I expected, even though I already knew. "I cooked your meals," I said. "I paid your tuition. I sat in ERs with you. I helped you move into dorms. And you thought I didn't match?" "I know," she said, almost whispering. "I know I was wrong. I know I hurt you. I just didn't want to lose everything again, so I gave in to what was easier. And now? I don't know," she said. "I just know I didn't want you to disappear from his life like you disappeared from mine. And I know that was on me." I looked at Owen. He was reaching for the strap of her bag, babbling to himself. "He's your grandson," Haley said. "And I understand if that means nothing now. But I wanted to try, at least once." "Would you have come if you weren't moving?" She didn't answer right away. "No," she admitted. That, at least, was honest. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. "But I've changed things. The cabin is part of something now. It won't be passed down. The money's locked into the foundation. I don't want arguments about it later." "I know," she said. "I also don't want visits out of guilt, or politeness, or holidays." "I'm not here because of guilt," she said. "I'm here because I realized you gave me everything, and I never once asked what you needed. And maybe you don't need anything from me now, but if you let me, I'd like to sit here with you for a little while. I'd like you to hold him," looked at me then. Not as someone trying to fix her image, not as a person performing daughterhood. She looked tired, human. I stood slowly, crossed the room and sat beside her. "Can I?" I asked. She handed me Owen. He was heavier than I expected. Warm, calm. He looked up at me without fear. I held him. She didn't speak. Neither did I. For the first time in years, the silence wasn't heavy. Haley stayed for 3 hours that first day. We didn't talk about the past much. She fed Owen, changed him on a folded blanket on the floor, and helped clean up the crumbs he left behind from the rice crackers she brought. She didn't try to force conversation. She didn't act like everything was normal. She didn't apologize a second time, and I didn't ask her to. Before leaving, she stood on the porch with Owen in her arms and looked at me. "I don't know how to make any of this right." "You can't," I said. She nodded as if she already knew that. "But I still want to come back, if that's okay." I told her the same thing I had said in the note. "The door is open. Just knock." She got in the car and left. I stood there until the dust settled and the road was quiet again. The following week she came back, this time without Owen. Just her, holding a paper bag with lemon muffins she'd baked herself. She helped me clean the garden beds in the back. We worked in silence, and when we sat for lunch, she asked about the women's retreat. "You've built something here," she said. "I didn't know." "You never asked." "I didn't want to ask," she said. "I didn't want to know how fine you were without me." I let that hang in the air, because it was true, and because I hadn't always been fine. I told her a little about Carla and Deborah, about Marie and Francis. She asked how the trust worked. I explained that the land was protected, the foundation fully funded, and no one could undo what I had built. She didn't ask to be added back into the will. She just listened. Over the next month, she came by 3 more times. One visit was just 10 minutes. She dropped off some baby clothes someone had given her that didn't fit, and asked if any of the retreat women might need them. Another visit, she brought a photo album, and we sat through 10 pages before I asked her to stop. I wasn't ready to go back that far. Each visit was brief, quiet, without expectation. Then one Monday morning, a letter arrived. It wasn't from Haley. It was a formal invitation, embossed, heavy cardstock. The envelope was pale blue, and the return address read, "The Rockwell Club." I opened it, and there it was. A printed invitation to Owen's first birthday party, hosted by Margaret and Mark. The party was set to take place at a private venue. Formal attire suggested, guest list enclosed. Haley's name was there, but not in the hosted by section. She was listed simply as Owen's mother. I read the card twice. Then I found the note tucked in the bottom. "Mom, I didn't know Margaret was going to send these out." I told her I wanted to do something smaller, quieter, but she planned the whole thing without asking. "I'm sorry. I didn't agree to the way it was worded. You're not obligated to come. But if you do, I'll make sure you're treated with the respect you deserve. Love, Haley." I set the card down on the kitchen table and walked outside. There was no way I was going. It wasn't about the venue or the clothes. It was about everything that card represented. Margaret hadn't changed. She was still trying to rewrite the story, still trying to place me at the edge of the picture, still treating me like a piece of the past they could rearrange when it suited them. That night, I sat at the table with the women from the group. Marie brought soup. Deborah had baked bread. We didn't talk about families or forgiveness. We talked about small things. The weather, a leak in the roof, a book someone left behind in the guest room. After they left, I took the invitation and walked out to the fire pit behind the cabin. I didn't burn it out of rage. I didn't tear it up for drama. I just placed it into the pit, struck a match, and let it go. The next morning, I received a text from Haley. "Did you get the invitation?" I replied, "I did. I understand if you're not coming. I'm not. But thank you for letting me know the truth." She didn't try to change my mind. A week later, on Owen's birthday, I spent the day working in the shed with Francis. We built shelves for the new storage room. The cabin was full of noise. Women laughing, clinking dishes, chairs scraping on wood floors. Around noon, Marie's niece came by with a donation. 2 boxes of yarn, 6 sets of knitting needles, and 3 baby blankets someone had made for practice. We placed the blankets in a basket near the front door. Around 5 in the evening, I heard a car pull up. I didn't go outside. I waited. Then the knock came. I opened the door. It was Haley. She wasn't dressed for a party, no makeup, no heels, just jeans and a wrinkled shirt. She held Owen in her arms, and a slice of cake in a plastic container. "I didn't stay long," she said. "It wasn't for him. It was for them." I stepped aside, and she walked in. She placed the container on the counter and took a seat. I took Owen in my arms, and this time, it wasn't awkward. He babbled. He tugged at my shirt. He pressed his cheek against my chest and fell asleep there. Haley sat quietly for a while. Then she said, "I think I let too many people decide how I should be a daughter, how I should be a mother. I'm trying to undo that." I nodded. "That's your work, not mine." "I know," she said, "but I'm doing it anyway." We sat there in silence. Owen snored softly. I didn't know if she would change completely. I didn't know if Margaret would ever stop trying to rewrite my role. But I knew this. I had built something they couldn't touch, a life they couldn't edit, a peace that didn't require anyone's approval. When Haley left that evening, she didn't ask to be let back in. She just said, "I'll come again next week if that's all right." "You don't need to ask," I said. She nodded, and then she walked away. Not like someone looking for forgiveness, but like someone learning how to show up. For the first time, that was enough.